Hello and welcome everyone to the Polity Primer series of Drishti IAS. My name is Pragya. In today's interesting episode of Polity Primer, we are going to discuss yet another important constitutional amendment. The title of our today's discussion is the 25th Constitutional Amendment Act. So in previous session, we discussed the 24th Constitutional Amendment Act, and now we are going to discuss this 25th Constitutional Amendment Act. And definitely after watching these sessions and the upcoming sessions, you will be able to understand the historical background behind the evolution of the basic structure doctrine in the Keshwanand Bharti case by our Honorable Supreme Court of India. So in this discussion, we are firstly going to study about what is the 25th Constitutional Amendment. Then we are also going to analyze its historical background. Then we are also going to see some of the key provisions that have been inserted by the 25th Constitutional Amendment Act in our Indian Constitution. And lastly, we are going to see some of the practice questions from the prelims examinations. If I talk about the 25th Constitutional Amendment Act, let me explain to you a bit about its historical background. Okay, so basically this act was enacted to overturn the Honorable Supreme Court judgment in the case of R.C. Cooper versus Union of India. That is also known as the bank nationalization case. So the Indira Gandhi government had followed a socialistic bent of mind, okay, and they wanted to bring certain reforms which definitely enforce the directive principles of state policy. So they wanted to have the directive principles of state policies enforced, but as per Article 37 of our Indian Constitution, the directive principles of state policy are non-justiciable in nature. That means you cannot go to the Supreme Court and say that, or even the High Court and say that my directive principles of state policy have been violated. No, this is not happening. And there were two legal questions that were focal point of tussle between the Government of India and the Honorable Supreme Court of India. The first question was whether DPSP could prevail over fundamental rights. Prevail over fundamental rights. Okay. And the second question was, is a constitutional amendment a law for the purposes of Article 13? For the purpose of Article 13 Clause 2. Article 13 Clause 2. So basically, these legal questions were a focal point of tussle between the Honorable Supreme Court of India and the Government of India. So in the bank nationalization case, what happened was the Indira Gandhi wanted to nationalize the banks so as to remove the control of the private sectors from the bank. She said that they are not concerned about the rural development, etc. and we want to do social justice, and that is why she proposed nationalizing these banks. Okay, and this nationalization of banks was opposed by R.C. Cooper, who was a major shareholder in various these banks. Okay, so he said that no, this is a violation of my fundamental right of property, and he challenged the law which was made to nationalize the banks in the Indian Supreme Court. Okay, so it was ruled in this case that the Constitution provides compensation rights or the economic equality of the property that was forcibly acquired. So basically, there was an ordinance. An ordinance stated that we are giving you compensation, and the compensation will be given after 10 years. So the ordinance was enacted and it provided for a nominal compensatory amount, a reasonable compensation amount. But the Supreme Court in this case agreed with R.C. Cooper that yes, it actually has to be the market value of the property that the government was acquiring. Moving forward, R.C. Cooper also argued that the legislation did not give him adequate compensation, therefore violating his fundamental right to property under Article 31 and freedom to carry on a business under Article 19 Clause 1 Subclause G. So this was his argument in the bank nationalization case, and the Supreme Court agreed that yes, the compensation has to be for the market value of the property. So basically, to overturn this judgment, the 25th Constitutional Amendment Act was enacted by the Parliament of India at that point of time. So this was the historical background on which the whole 25th Constitutional Amendment Act is premised. Okay. And the legislation was the Banking Companies Acquisition and Transfer of Property Act. Transfer of Property Act 1969. So this was the legislation that was in question in the bank nationalization case. Now let us understand the key provisions. Moving forward, Article 31 provided for a fundamental right to property. At that point of time, as I have explained in my previous session as well, right to property was a fundamental right. It stated that any person whose property was acquired by the government was entitled to compensation. Okay. And since 1954, the Supreme Court consistently held that under Article 31, if the government acquired property, it had to pay compensation equivalent to its market value. And that is why it became a concern for the government of India, because at that point of time, India was a very poor country and we were trying to have social justice in our country. So it became very difficult for the government to acquire any kind of property, and it also became difficult for the government to nationalize the banks. So to promote social justice, this Amendment Act was finally enacted by the Parliament of India. Now let us understand what are the key provisions of the 25th Constitutional Amendment Act. So basically, the amendment replaced the word compensation, because the whole point of law which was being discussed in the bank nationalization case, the focal point of issue was this word compensation. So basically, they had to remove this word compensation, and that is why they replaced it with the word amount in the Article 31 Clause 2, which could be fixed by law. So it could be any kind of amount, a nominal amount or a reasonable amount, any kind of amount. Okay. This meant that if the government acquired the property from citizens, it could pay a nominal amount. It was not necessary for the government to buy your own property, because as per the Supreme Court judgment in the bank nationalization case, the government had to pay a price that was equal to the market value of the property. That means government had to purchase the property if it wanted to distribute it to the poor people. So basically, this after this amendment, the whole scenario changed, and now the government could acquire your property by paying a nominal amount. The amendment also stated that this amount could not be challenged in any court of law. Basically, it made this amount outside the purview of judicial review by Indian courts. Okay, so basically, the power of the Indian Supreme Court of judicial review was ended by this amendment. It said that no, you cannot now judicially scrutinize the amount which we are giving as compensation. Moving forward, finally, it also stated that the acquisition of property would supersede the fundamental right to carry on a business or trade under Article 19 Clause 1 Subclause G. Therefore, any acquisition could not be challenged solely because it violates the fundamental right under Article 19 Clause 1 Subclause G. And all of these were made for the purposes of having social justice in India, for furthering the objective of socialism in India. The amendment also inserted Article 13 Clause C. Okay. The amendment also inserted Article 31 Clause C. It provided that any law made to give effect to the directive principles contained in Articles 39 Clause B or C cannot be challenged on the ground of violation of the fundamental rights guaranteed by Article 14, 19 and 31. So basically wherever there was Article 31, entry of Article 31 clause C, Article 14 would automatically go out. So basically it could not be challenged in the courts on the ground that yes, my fundamental right under 14, 19 or 31 is being violated. So this was some of the key provisions in the 25th Constitutional Amendment Act. And the constitutional validity of this 25th Constitutional Amendment Act was challenged in the case of Keshwanand Bharti. Keshwanand Bharti versus State of Kerala. So the Supreme Court said that the compensation amount which you are giving should be fair and reasonable. Fair and reasonable. And definitely we will retain our power of judicial review. That means we could scrutinize whatever amount you are giving under our power of judicial review. So basically the constitutional validity of this 25th Constitutional Amendment Act was upheld in the case of Keshwanand Bharti case. With this we come to a conclusion of our today's discussion. We have seen what was the 25th Constitutional Amendment Act of our Indian Constitution. We have also understood its historical background, that yes, the government at that point of time was following socialism, wanted to promote social justice. We were having agrarian reforms. We were trying to eliminate the private control over the banks. So all of this were happening, and definitely there was a focal point of tussle between the Honorable Supreme Court of India and Government of India on two questions. The questions were whether DPSP could be enforced over fundamental rights, and the second question was, is constitutional amendment a law for the purposes of Article 13 clause 2 of the Indian Constitution. So all of this was happening, and which finally led to the evolution of the basic structure doctrine in the Keshwanand Bharti case. Now let us discuss some of the questions from the perspective of your prelims examination. So the question is, consider the following statements. Your statement number 1 is, the 25th Constitutional Amendment Act was enacted to reverse the Supreme Court judgment in R.C. Cooper versus Union of India. Your statement number 2 is, it provided that acquisition of property can be challenged in courts. Which of these statements given above is are correct? Your options are, option A is 1 only, option B is 2 only, option C is both 1 and 2, and option D is none of the above. So I am revealing the correct answer for you. Your correct answer will be option A, 1 only, because the amendment provided that acquisition of property cannot be challenged in any court. So basically it snatched the power of judicial review of the courts, and that is why only statement 1 is correct. Moving forward to another question of our today's discussion. So the question is, which article is inserted in the Indian Constitution by the 25th Constitutional Amendment Act? Your options are, option A is Article 31 Clause A, your option B is Article 31 Clause B, your option C is Article 31 Clause C, and your option D is none of the above. And this answer will be given by you to me in the comment box below. I hope this session was insightful for you. If you have any feedback regarding this session, you can drop it in the comment box below. If you liked today's discussion and found it to be helpful, kindly like the video and subscribe to our channel for more such updates. Thank you.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.